So in this tutorial, we're going to learn about player controllers, and the other one it was pretty long, so we're going to do this one a lot quicker. Since it'll be the too long didn't read version. We've got a show in here where we press U and the value of a light's area radius goes up, making it brighter, and J makes it go down, and then L toggles it off and on. And so I'm going to teach you how to build this really quickly. And that's through what is called the player controller. So let's learn that when we start new. So to build a player controller and connect inputs to actions on a show, we're going to build our scene first and decide which things we want to drive by script using the player controller connected inputs. So I'm going to start with drawing a box. And using horizons, I'm going to use it as a quick way to get a night scene. I'm going to use night full moon. We'll set the moon off to the back. And then I'm going to set up a light. I'm going to click the light on the top of the box. That'll draw it pointing down against the box. I just rotate it here. Let's move. And we'll move it into position here. Put it where we want it. And so now we've got our light set up, and so what we want to do is set up a player controller. Player controllers can live on a viewport or on a player object if you want them to, but they can also live on a camera. But the number one place and the primary place I encourage you to build them, or not build them, just place them, is on what's called an overlay viewport. So pressing this plus button while selected on this viewport down here, create an overlay viewport. And an overlay viewport is something that lives on top of all your viewports. No matter which viewport you're selected in or whatever camera is feeding into that viewport, there will always be something over that. This is a place where you'll place global player controls. This is a place where you'll also put in things like you might, it's a screen here that can have two-dimensional objects on it. Like you might have text that lives wherever you go in space, like a heads-up display, or might be your logo on a show, and it lives above any of the viewports. So it's globally present universal viewport. And that, and then lastly, like that's where you place like audio tracks that are like universal, that aren't spatial. It'll go anywhere in the world. That's where they live, is in this overlay viewport. You'll recognize that you can't move when you're in an overlay viewport. So what you're going to want to do is make sure you toggle back and forth between overlay viewport, terrain space viewport. Overlay viewport, you can't move around. You're just looking at a two-dimensional overlay. Then when we're back in terrain space, we can fly the camera around and reposition things. So we'll click on this overlay viewport, and in the hierarchy, that text entity that we put on, I'm going to go ahead and just hit the read and get that out of there. Okay, so on the overlay viewport, you're going to go to the viewport. You're going to hit add, this little button right here, add player controller. This player controller now has this little plus button here. This is where you're going to add in types of user inputs. Analog, this is like a two-dimensional value, like an X and a Y from -1 to 1 of like a thumb pad of a VR controller or a gamepad. A continuous button is a button that you want to hold down continuously and have it run a script every frame while it's being held. An on-off button is a button that gets called when it's pressed and when it's released, and so it sends a value of true when it's pressed, and when it's released, it sends another one called false. And so what we're going to use is continuous button user input for up. We're going to make another one for down. So we'll click another on-off button. No, sorry, continuous. This will be for bright, dim, and then we'll do a on-off button user input for the on-off button is going to be for toggling the light completely on and completely off. So when it comes on, we're first going to name it. So we'll call this one up. It means sort of brightness goes up. Down This one we're going to call it down. And then this one we're going to name OnOff. And you'll see these events have just populated down below. We have an event when we, it's going to be each of these names. So on up, this is what you do on the binding. If you're going to click the default binding, it's going to say press a control. You're going to hit the button you want to connect. This is when you can connect to a MIDI controller. You'll want your MIDI controller plugged into your computer, USB or otherwise, before you start Simmetri. And then when you press this button, press something on your MIDI controller, and it'll now take that binding. Press here, press U for up. For down, let's expand down and assign it. I'm going to say J. For on-off, I'm going to assign L for light. Okay, so now we're going to fill up our script. By clicking these, the hyperlink of these events, it opens up the Lua scripting window. And it populates the Lua scripting window with a function by this name. So we have on up, on down, and we have on off. And this is passing in an argument value. It's called an F value. That's a float value. So coming in on a press, you're going to have a value from 0 to 1, and all the decimal in between. And this gets called because it's continuous. It's going to get called every frame, and then as soon as it's released, it's going to call one more time with a 0. And so what we're going to do is get our light into this script so that we're accessing our light, and then we're going to change values on that. And so to make it go up, we want to get a hold of our light. So what we need to do is get out of the viewport here and come over to this viewport here. Before we do that, what we're going to do on our viewport is just pin it here with this plus, so that we can always kind of come back to it easily without having to go all the way into the viewport and whatnot. That way, no matter what we select, we come out of this viewport and we're over here and we select the box, we can always come back to the overlay viewport here and get into the script that way. Okay. So we need to get the light into this script, so we need to go find the light. So it lives in the terrain space, and once we're selected in the terrain space, it'll show up in the hierarchy. So the spotlight, we're going to pull into here. And now we can just copy and paste it into these other parts of the function, these other functions. So on the up, as I'm pressing this, I want my spotlight's area radius value to increment upwards. So I'm going to say it equals spotlight dot area radius plus, and you can tinker with this. I found that 0.1 every frame tends to look right. So remember, on our player controller, the up function is going to get called when you press the U button. So when I go to the playtime now, click out of the Lua window, click back into on the screen, and as I press play, if I hit U, hold down U, I can see the area radius value on the spotlight going up. Now, let's take a look at that property. I'll show you before, but this is basically what we're doing every time. Right? So we're basically doing that through this function. But let's start this off with some darker values. Okay, so now that we've been able to press play, we'll do it again. Press U and it goes up. Let's just go ahead and we'll edit this in stop time. Let's just copy this and reverse it for the on down. And so what did we say on down was? On down is controlled by J. Let's play, click in the space, U goes brighter, J goes dim, U goes bright, dim. Great. And so now we just need to turn it off and turn it on. So let's so this is a different type. Again, these were continuous. So let's go back to our player controller. Remember, these were continuous type user inputs. and this on-off is an on-off button. And so that gives you a boolean. It means when you press it down, it gives you true. When you press it, when it comes back up, it gives you false. So let's write our script. I'm going to write it wrong, and then I'm going to write it better. Again, we can just grab this spotlight. This is the find by unique ID. Right? That's its spotlight's like social security number, so we know how to get it. So when we press down L, we want these. It's gonna when we press it down, it's gonna call spotlight, and then we'll say spotlight active equals. You could do this two ways. You could make an if statement if the b value is true. You could basically say spotlight.active equals b value. So this would look one way, right? So spotlight.active equals false if the b value is false. Now, that's not going to quite look right. So let's see, for example, if I press L, it turns off the last value it gets is this false value. This gets, remember, on press, true, on release, false. So how are we going to do this? Well, spotlight dot active, what we want to do is make it what it isn't. If it's true, we want to toggle it to false. So here's a fun way of doing that. Equals not spotlight dot active. So in this case, when we press L, we get a toggle. When we hold it down, when we hit true, spotlight.active equals false, and then spotlight.active equals true. In fact, we can even demonstrate this over here. You should see this change. So as I press and hold L, you'll see active turn to false right here. And it becomes true again. And so one of the things that you need to do often on this on-off button is if you want it to just happen on a press, so when the b value is true, then we do the function. We just need to do an if-then statement. So if the value is true, meaning we press the button down, then do these things. You have to put an end statement in the your if, and you're good to go. So in this case, when I press play, and if I press down L, it takes in that one value. It toggles. It does this one time, not twice. It only does it on the true. It ignores it on the false, and so it switches it from whatever it isn't. So it switches it from active true to active false. And so you can see it toggling here. I just press L one time. We go from true to false. L again, we go true to false. And then we've got our up and down value. So there you go. Recap on the terrain space viewport. We added an overlay viewport. On that overlay viewport, we added a player controller. On that player controller, we added inputs for button presses. We named them. And it's a good thing, maybe we'll name this global controls. So we added every one of our inputs, we added a name, and then bound it to a button. And then each of those populated an event. Once they were named, we had an event. When we clicked on those, each of those, they populated our script. Then we wrote our script and brought into our script the things that we wanted to control. And the end result, we have a show that even in present time can change. This I may have just broken when I was messing around. I've just broken the on-off. So in mind, you can edit values and change the script while staying in playtime, but you may end up overwriting or accidentally writing the wrong thing into your script. You always want to click out of that little window when you press play. Okay, so there you go.